There are no words for the tragedy I'm about to explain to you, but very recently in Charlotte, North Carolina, a Ukrainian woman who literally fled a war-torn country, got off her work shift, headed into her evening commute on a local train, and was brutally murdered. Legacy media is dismissing this story, saying it was astroturfed by MAGA influencers, and at worst, they're erasing the story altogether. Let's lock in. It's only thanks to X that we know this story because people took their surveillance footage and posted it everywhere. This innocent woman, Iryna Zarutska, as I said, had just left her work shift at a pizza place. She was minding her own business on a train car when a lunatic gets behind her and starts viciously stabbing her to death. And then he keeps walking around the train car nonchalantly as though nothing happened. There are so many levels to this, quite frankly, horror movie, but at surface level, this is a woman who escaped death and destruction in one country only to be confronted with third world violence in America. And her new life in America was just beginning. She'd had this job. She had dreams to become a veterinary assistant. She was hardworking. She was loved by all her coworkers. She had so much life to live. She was a beautiful woman. And now she's just another statistic, thanks to progressive soft on crime policies. To pay tribute to this woman, because mainstream media is not giving her or this entire incident their due. From ABC, though, from a local ABC news station, those who knew Zarutska described her as a gifted and passionate artist who loved sculpting and designing clothing that reflected her vibrant spirit. She was also an animal lover who often cared for her neighbors' pets. Charlotte, you may have wondered, is, yes, a Democratic-run city. This episode is another nail in the coffin for progressive policies and how they empower the worst of the worst while punishing law-abiding citizens like this woman. This guy who murdered her was a career criminal. His name was DeCarlos Brown Jr. He was a repeat offender whom the city of Charlotte and Mecklenburg County allowed to wander the streets after 14 felony arrests and a 5-year sentence in prison for convictions for robbery with a dangerous weapon, breaking and entering, and larceny in Mecklenburg County in 2015. So his rap sheet was extensive, but because of bail reform policies in Charlotte, specifically Mecklenburg County, in March 2019, it made changes to its bail policy that reduced reliance on monetary bail for lower-level crimes. This was part of a larger push by the county to create a fairer and more equitable criminal justice system. The governor of North Carolina, Josh Stein, is a Democrat, and the guy before him, who was governor of the state, Roy Cooper, also a Democrat. They are presiding over these kinds of bail reforms, which are under the pretense of toxic empathy, or I should just say regular empathy. They think they're being compassionate and humanitarian toward criminals who've committed lower-level offenses, but these things tend to snowball. The mayor of Charlotte, also a Democrat. She's made this whole thing so much worse. Play the clip.
In a post to social media, Mayor Lyles is calling the attack senseless and a tragic loss. She goes on to say she has been focusing on what safety looks like in Charlotte and that she is committed to making the city a place for everyone to feel comfortable in.
Lyles also said, "I want to thank our media partners and community members who've chosen not to repost or share the footage. I will spare you from the full footage. It's difficult to find online. It is disgusting. It's harrowing. When I first saw this footage, I literally felt ill. I felt nauseous. It's so disgusting and honestly gut-wrenching that a part of you doesn't even want to believe it's real. The fact that it could happen to an innocent young woman like that, who was literally just trying to get home after work, and this absolute insane person, I mean, the gore, there are no words. And what has made her suffering so much worse is the way that the media has treated it, and the remarks like Democratic officials, like this mayor, who are saying things like, oh, well, mental health disease is a big part of the problem here. And she says that we need to treat mental health problems with the same compassion that we would cancer, as though mental health in this case is the excuse for the evil we just saw. You also are seeing Democrats that are blaming this incident, either directly or indirectly, on poverty. I mean, we heard Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson say on MSNBC very recently that affordable housing would be a much better antidote to violent crime in Chicago than more cops or more prosecutions of violent criminals or putting them in jail. I mean, they think that they're making a good argument for progressive policies, but it's actually barbaric to see the statistics that they are in these cities, like just awful violent crime, and to prescribe affordable housing or, oh, well, it's just an economic issue. Now, this guy was a monster. This was not an economic issue. Had this violent guy had more welfare checks or more money coming, I don't know if that would have changed the fact that he arbitrarily, without prompting, without provocation, murdered an innocent woman on the North Carolina train. How would that have changed anything? Yes, he's mentally ill, no doubt about it, but like some people are just monsters. And to treat them compassionately by letting them back out onto the street, you are just making life hell for law-abiding people. We know that things aren't always black and white, but sometimes when it comes to 14 past criminal offenses, it absolutely is. This guy should have been locked up for life, frankly. He should have probably never seen the light of day again. He was a public liability. I think his rap sheet proves that. This story and the way that the media has treated it so far reminded me a lot of Daniel Penny and the opposite reaction they had to him. You remember he was the US Marine who was riding a subway in New York City one day and intervened as the Good Samaritan by restraining an aggressive lunatic who was verbally threatening to kill passengers around him. He put him in a chokehold, and later he died of asphyxiation. The media has obviously had a pretty disgusting double standard when it comes to crime. This story reminded me of Daniel Penny. I'm a New York City resident. I used to take the subway by myself when I first moved to Manhattan. I thought I was invincible because, like any unassuming new transplant in New York City, I thought public transportation would be safe because what else are my taxpayer dollars going to? But I quickly found out after a couple close calls where I was either alone on a subway car and some lunatic wandered on, or I realized that the bystanders around me, in the event of someone doing something crazy, would probably say nothing and do nothing. So that's a whole nother can of worms, the cowardice crisis in America, especially in places like New York City. But in another sense, no one in New York City is incentivized to defend law-abiding citizens because the progressives in City Hall will punish you if you do. We saw this with Daniel Penny. Daniel Penny's story is a direct foil to what's going on with this case in North Carolina because you're seeing either zero or frankly dismissive coverage of this story. Daniel Penny had so many opponents in the media, in so many articles for months on end. It was an entire saga. That man was put through the ringer. He was thrust into the public spotlight when he was just trying to be a good person. He really had very few allies in the media aside from a few conservatives here and there. With this Ukrainian woman, she also has no allies, which is fitting because progressives routinely, again, will prioritize the criminals. One outlet wrote, "The gruesome video of the fatal knife attack on Iryna Zarutska on a light rail car in Charlotte is drawing attention from MAGA influencers seeking to elevate the issue of violent urban crime and accuse mainstream media of undercovering shocking cases." Yes, that is true. They're also saying that if not for the surveillance camera footage, no one would be freaking out about it. Yes, that's true. But to me, that's an argument for more surveillance footage in public transit, in public transportation, so that there's an extra incentive for these public officials to be held, to be accountable to what goes on there. The media is giving away the game just by showing the tone here. The tone is that why would you bother elevating violent urban crime? It's so ubiquitous. What's one murder from the next? And it's that attitude that perpetuates violent urban crime, because if this is just something that happens in the south side of Chicago, then why should politicians bother fixing it? Why should anyone bother fixing it? It's just gonna happen. People might get mugged. Oh well. I've said it before that the most basic function of government, I don't care if you're a Republican mayor, Democratic mayor, progressive, democratic socialist, whatever you identify as, the most basic function of government, at least from the founding father framework is to secure the public safety of your citizens, to secure their lives, their property, to prevent them from getting hurt by people who do not subscribe to the social order. This is like basic 10 commandments, actually, and it's the basic function of government. And in Charlotte, which is run by Democrats, in Chicago, which is run by Democrats, and a plethora of other deep, deep blue cities, they have failed their citizens because they have ignored this number one priority of government. But like clockwork, the conservatives' pounce narrative is back. Most of media right now is using this woman's horrific tragedy as an opportunity to vilify conservatives for daring to bring it up. The problem is not the violent killing, but the fact that you dared to notice it. As we all know, President Trump is trying to take matters into his own hands with cracking down on crime in Washington, D.C., and word on the street is that he may extend this effort into Chicago by deploying the National Guard, since, as far as he's concerned, the elected leaders there, all Democratic, have abdicated their responsibility to keep the people safe. For more on that whole anti-crime campaign from the Trump administration, click here.